and Texas. My guest today is Sharon Epstein on the Healing Path. And we're both in the Central Time Zone, which is just like unusual for me and kind of exciting. So, if this is your first time to be visiting the Healing Path, I'm Laura Donnelly, founder of Dancing with Ease and creator of the Body Brain Business Balance process. People hire me to teach them to move out of pain. And for me, healing, when healing happens, which it does all the time and in different and unusual ways, I experience a reduction in pain. And so the healing path is about multiple modalities and many people working in various areas of healing to share their work, so that depending on what's going on with you, you might find somebody here who offers something that is just what you need. Or the conversation may include interesting things that send you in the right direction for finding healing. This is just a series of conversations with people who are working in multitude area of healing, whether traditional medicine or alternative medicine or coaching or writing or dream work. It covers the gamut. The main thing is that we believe that all healing begins inside with an intention to heal. And then healing happens, not always when we expect it, and it doesn't always look like we think it will look, but it happens. So I will bring Sharon on, and she'll tell you a little bit about herself, and then we'll talk about parenting with joy and ease. Hi, Sharon.
Hey Laura, so good to be with you and everybody who's watching live and on the replay. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm well. We had snow, so I think I didn't pay attention to the news yesterday, but I'm pretty sure they closed school because we had like 6 inches overnight. And I just remember that as a kid, one of the things we wanted to do was build an igloo, and we almost never had enough snow.
How great is that? We built snowmen, but an igloo, that's impressive.
And my mom. This is one of the things about parenting is if she thought that it wasn't dangerous, she pretty much let us explore and do whatever we wanted. And so then for me, when she said no, there was a reason to say no. And so I was, as we talked beforehand, I was kind of a perfect child, right? Not.
A legend in our own minds, right?
Yes, yes. But so how did you get started in this work, Sharon? Or do you want to tell people about your life, your history, your whatever, and I'll show them your webpage.
Okay, great. I'll tie that all together for you, all those questions. So I am a parent coach, and I work with parents who have children from toddlers to tweens, and I help parents resolve conflicts or struggles that they're having with their kids, so that everyone in the family can get along better, and ultimately parents can have more peace and joy and love in their family and their life. So parents typically come to me when a child just isn't listening. No matter what you try, they're just not doing what you ask. Or you have a really strong-willed child, or who can sometimes seem defiant, like you ask them to do something and they just like ignore you. Or maybe you have children who are fighting with each other all the time and you just can't get them to stop and it's like driving you crazy. Or you have a child maybe who's been sleeping in your bed and now you want to transition them to their own bed, but that's not working. They don't want to leave, but maybe they do, and they come in and wake you up in the middle of the night and now you're exhausted, which just makes everything more difficult. Or they're not going to the bathroom, they're not potty training, or they're way past the age that they should. Any of those kinds of things where there's some kind of struggle going on and you as a parent really want your child to be doing X instead of Y, and you just can't get there. And it's causing you to feel frustrated and exhausted or overwhelmed, and you're like, I just can't take this anymore. And so that's the ideal time to ask for help and get an outside perspective, to learn some new ideas, learn more about yourself, learn some new tools to handle those situations. Because, and talking about healing, a lot of times what happens for us as parents when we're trying to help our children learn and trying to point them in the right direction, and it seems like they're refusing, and we try to maybe control that situation or push harder or do something. Like we've tried everything we can think of, and we can get triggered, right? We can start to yell. We can start to think, oh no, maybe I'm not a good parent, and like all the kinds of things that go through our minds. And it's those moments, as kind of difficult as they are, that's really the entry point into to growth and to healing. Because those are the moments, right, that are telling us, oh, I have this awareness that I want to change. And I want this dynamic, this pattern in my family to change. I don't know how to do it yet, but I know I'm not satisfied with how things are right now. And that, again, that awareness is the first step, as I'm sure a lot of your listeners have heard, to the growth and the healing that's possible for you. So that's kind of how parenting relates to healing. And as far as my own background, right now I have two teenage girls who get along well and listen to me. I will say that when they were younger, that wasn't the case. And there's a lot that I learned from raising them. And I used to be a yeller, and I had to figure out how to stop that. Even though they're great kids, they had just the normal sibling rivalry that happens where the older one was picking on the younger one. The younger one knew how to push the older one's buttons. And no matter what my husband and I tried, it just wasn't ending until we finally figured out what to do. There were times when my husband and I weren't on the same page about how to handle the kids. And that's, upsetting because you want to feel like you're a team. So once I was kind of the one who took the lead on this, I'll go into a little bit of my background in a second. Once I figured out some solutions and my husband saw that they were working, he's like, oh, okay, I'll try that. And then that got us back on the same page. I came to
It is
this,
hard because kids
yeah,
know when you're not on the same page, and they use that to get their own way. They're so crafty, you know.
yes, they are. I always say that children are experts in us, right? They know
Mhm.
us really well and they know how to kind of maneuver in there or push our buttons or whatever it is. And children will do whatever we allow them to do, wherever our boundaries are, however, tight or wide, they will certainly act within them. And it's children's job to push those boundaries and see, right? Sometimes it feels really personal when children, test against us, right? It's not personal. It's just being a kid. Like if you think back, you probably did some of those things too. You weren't being bad. It's just part of the like growing up process, right? And that's when we're called as parents to say, okay, is this okay with me or not? And how do I want to handle it?
Yeah, really good. I mean, because you want your child to be confident, independent, able to assess a situation and make decisions. I mean, you don't want them always going, "Is this okay? Is this okay? Can I do this? Is it?" You really don't want that. You know, but if you say, "Brush your teeth now," and they say no, darn it, that's not okay either.
No, and then you're like, oh no, what do I do? Like I can't force them to brush their teeth, right? Sort of like picking up the toothbrush and trying to force open their mouth, right? And that dynamics when the kid says no, and now you have a conflict, that no matter what it's about, I think is one of the toughest moments as a parent until you kind of figure out how to handle that. Absolutely.
How did you learn tools and techniques to help people?
Yeah. Well, a couple of ways. I have background as a counselor, and I studied psychology, and I also was a corporate leadership trainer.
Oh, wow.
And actually, if you think about it, parents are leaders. And so a lot of what I taught in the corporate world was how to communicate well with your employees so that they will be happy in their work and be more productive. There's kind of a tie in there with kids, right? How do I communicate with my children so they'll listen to me and do what I'm trying to teach them to do? Um, and how do you handle an employee who's not performing? How do I handle a child who's not behaving the way that I want them to? And really, good communication skills are good communication skills.
Yeah.
Um, so I came, through my work and helping, also doing coaching with leaders and managers about how they could grow in their own leadership skills, which is a lot of personal development. So all of that work relates directly to parenting because good communication skills and personal growth, it's the same. It's just with a different kind of job, so to speak. Um,
And
and
maybe not quite so many triggers in the workplace, right? Like you're in the grocery store and your kid starts to scream, and it's really hard not to feel bad, to just keep your separation.
Yes, that's a lovely way to put it because with parenting, it's so much more personal, isn't it? And then, so there are two things that I want to pull out of what you just said. One is this fear of judgment that we have, right? Especially in public when our kid is melting down, we're like, oh my God, what are all the people around me thinking? They must think I'm a terrible parent. Well, maybe I am because I can't get my kid to stop. So, yes, I want to normalize that all of us feel this way. It's just a natural human reaction. And the other thing I want to say about that is, we all want to do the best for our kids, right? And so in those moments when we're going, oh, am I messing them up? Am I a bad parent? By definition, you are a good parent because a bad parent would never have those thoughts going through their mind. So because you care, you're already a good parent. And what
That's
I'll add,
awesome.
yeah,
That's
and what I'll add to
really
that,
awesome.
yeah, what I'll add to that is the way I define a great parent is someone who really loves their kid and keeps trying and doesn't give up even when nothing is working and they're out of ideas, that they ask for help so they can figure out what to do.
Right.
So if you're in that frame, you're on the right path.
I had a friend when I was younger. Well, okay, when I was younger, people were going into counseling and groups and things, and a a big piece of it was to look back and kind of blame your parents for messing you up, you know. And so then I think there are a lot of parents now, the age where their parents maybe have gone through counseling and had this idea that their own parents messed them up. And so one of the most helpful things that my friend told me was, you know, if your parent got you to 18 and didn't kill you and eat you before 18, they were a good enough parent. And I was like, whoa. And and she just said, just look across the spectrum of mammals and other animals. I mean, like my guppies. I remember my guppies would have their babies, and it took us like at least two hatches of guppies to figure out the fastest thing was to take the parents out. But they started to eat the little baby guppies. So that was like, and then the other thing she said is, "Are you still a kid?" And I'm like, "No." And so, what if your person did the best they could? Your parent did absolutely the best they could with the situation that happened. And if you say it's good enough, then everything you do now is your own choice. So I would tell you that I have no blame for my parents. I did. My dad died when I was 9, and so like I was like, why did he leave? And but but I it's my that was my path. That was part of my healing, was to move through that. They didn't do it to me on purpose. I mean, and we're just talking about normal kids, and we're just talking about normal parenting. We're not talking about abuse or anything like that. But I love what you said, is that to even doubt yourself as a parent means that you're really a caring and conscientious parent.
Absolutely. And I'll add to, thinking about, the things that our parents do or those wounds that we still have because maybe they didn't empathize enough with us, or we feel like they just didn't really understand us, or they were too critical. I know I come from a very kind of critical, judgmental family. And then parents didn't realize how those things hurt us or how much we needed those things, right? So we're still carrying those hurts with us. And you're right, our parents did the best they could with what they knew and in their situation, again, excluding anything like abuse. And so now, as parents, especially if we're thinking, well, I want to do things differently with my children, right? I want to give them that empathy or that understanding, or I don't want to give them those harsh punishments like the ones that I got. Um, that's your chance to kind of break family patterns, right? And then also to heal yourself, because when you're making those shifts, it allows you to heal the hurt parts inside of you for the things that you didn't get. Because when you can pass it on in a good way, the way you wish you had had it, right? That works for your child, and you see how wonderful that relationship is and how great your child feels and, toward you, that makes you feel good inside, and you can release. And again, that is the healing process for you, as a parent, because you're passing things on in a different way, in a better way.
That's really beautiful. Um, since your kids are in their kind of their teen years, did are your parents still alive?
Yes, they are.
As you worked with your family and better communication with you and your children, did you notice communication changing between you and your parents?
Well, not maybe not as much as you would like me to answer for that question, but I what happened was I forgave my parents for things that they didn't do, and I came to accept them as who they are and what their limits are. And I think the biggest thing that helped me was to stop expecting them to give me something that they weren't able to give, or to accept that they are the way they are and they're not going to change. So given that, how do I, want my relationship to be within that framework, and how can I make it as positive as I can and enjoy them as much as I can, even though there's still parts that hurt, there's still these tender areas at times. But I think, just accepting them for who they are, and again, this not expecting them to be someone they can't, it just allows you to let go. It releases a lot of frustration and anger, because they can't change. So if you keep expecting that, if I keep expecting that, right, I'm locked in the cycle of frustration that I can't get out of. And so that was really helpful to me.
Well, and then I'm thinking too is that as you accept them for who they are, were you better able to accept yourself for who you are? Because we can't be all things to our kids. We cannot. I mean, they got their own stories going on inside their heads, and sometimes you might say what you thought was the most helpful thing, and depending on where they are, it slides in as a let me say, as a criticism or a fault, and that wasn't your intention, and so I think a lot of parenting has to do with accepting, like, it's just like life, right? We aren't perfect,
Very
and we're
much.
not going to do everything perfectly, and we can't be the be all and end all for our children. We can just really be the safe launching pad in a way.
I love, excuse me, I love what you're saying about no perfection, and that's something that I talk about a lot. If you don't know this already, I'm really sorry to break it to you. Anyone who's listening, you're not perfect. You're never going to be perfect. I'm not perfect. Laura's not perfect, right? We're human. As you said, with all our strengths and all our weaknesses, there is no such thing as a perfect parent. But here's what I do believe is true: that we're all on a parenting journey, right? If we're listening to this kind of podcast and we're interested in growing as people and as parents, we're on a journey from where we are now to where we want to be. And at each moment in time on that journey, we're doing the very best that we can. And then, even as in this moment, we're doing the very best that we can, we also all have the opportunity to grow and to learn. And the possibility that tomorrow we can do even a little bit better than we did today. And so keeping those three things in mind, is often very comforting for people to realize we're not going for perfection. We're accepting that we're on this journey and that we're just all trying to get a little bit better and do the best that we can.
I also think, um, from my point of view, that my mom had an idea that I was perfect, you
Hmm.
know, and that then the first time I had a meltdown, like my terrible twos. I'll tell you this story because it's very funny, very fast. So my grandma was who she was, right? And so I come from like probably four generations of perfectionists on both sides of my family. And and my grandma goes, "That's unacceptable. Throw a pitcher of water on her and she'll stop crying." My mom was not like that. So she got a juice glass, maybe 2 ounces. Maybe she filled it 3/4 full. And I she wanted to go somewhere, and my brother was an infant, and I was just pitching a fit. And so she told me she tossed the water at me, but she jerked her hand back because, she didn't really want to throw water on me. So, like she said, like 5 sprinkles of water got on me. She said, I quit crying immediately. I got up and I went into my bedroom. I had a little table and chair, and I sat down and I folded my hands. And she's standing outside the door, peeking in. She said, I'm sitting there going, Dottie Carroll threw water on me. Dottie Carroll threw water all over me. And so then there's a challenge not to laugh, right? As a parent, when your kid does something like this, you got to hold it together. You can laugh about it later. All together, you can tell the story and just say, I was busting a gut, but I had to hold the line for you. And and she said that I didn't ever throw another fit, you know. And I got up and I went with her. I don't, but that was kind of extreme. For her, that was extreme. I guess I'm sure that I was a terribly willful child and difficult to be with when I wanted to do my own thing and somebody else wanted to. I'm still like that. Oh,
So that brings up, I love your story. I love your story. And I'm glad you didn't get too wet. But the last thing that you said reminds me of something that I'm actually putting in my newsletter this weekend, which is when you talked about, I was a difficult kid, right? And how often do we describe our children that way? They're difficult, or we label them, this is my really active one. This is my bookworm, or this is my, risk taker, and this, but my other child's really careful and cautious, right? And so it's so easy to use those kind of descriptive words to talk about kids. Um, and while it certainly may be true, there are two things I want to caution parents about with that. One is the more you say it and believe it, the more you can kind of expect your child to always be that way and almost kind of put them in a box. So, like, but aren't they allowed to be an adventure taker sometimes? Or are they allowed to be a bookworm sometimes? Like, that's not the sum total of who they are. So you risk kind of like minimizing kind of all the possibilities and all the facets of who they are. And especially if it's a negative label and you think it a lot, it can alter your relationships or your feeling about your child. And then if your child hears you saying those things, then that can affect how they see themselves, right? Where they're like, oh, okay, well, I'm always going to be a risk taker. That's just who I am. And, I never have to be cautious, or the reverse. Or they may feel annoyed or frustrated or angry about that label because they don't think it fits them, or it feels unfair, or it feels negative, and it affects their self-esteem. So I just caution people to be careful about that. And actually, what I'm going to share is a bunch of other kinds of adjectives that you can use that are more neutral, right? But are also true. So are you bossy, or do you have leadership skills?
oh,
Are
see, that's
you,
good. My mom
are
told me
you,
I was bossy, and when she would get mad at me, she would call me Lucy, like Lucy in Peanuts.
uh-huh.
Oh, I hated that. Oh.
Yeah, it's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a great illustration,
yeah.
and to say, and it opens the door. Okay, I see that you want to lead here. How can you communicate better with your brother or your cousins in order to share with them your vision so they come along and play, you know,
Yes,
cowboys and
yes.
Indians with you?
Yes, because then you're taking that natural talent, right, and ability that your child has, and you're kind of channeling it. You're showing them how to use it to get what they want, right? Because if children just like try to order other kids around and it doesn't work, well, then they're stuck, right? They have this natural leadership ability, but you have to have people following you in order to be a leader, right? So how can you help them learn to use that ability for good so that they can use that talent and, have productive, positive relationships with other people? That's great.
That's really beautiful, Sharon. What are some other adjectives? You want to share a couple more?
Well, yeah. Are you curious as opposed to a risk taker? Are you empathetic as opposed to sensitive? Right?
Ah,
Often say you're too sensitive, right? Which I got called a lot. So I'm very sensitive about that label, right? What's wrong with being sensitive? Like, I'm aware of other people, right? I'm paying attention to how other people feel. Um, what else? Um, Somebody who's good at somebody who listens well, as opposed to someone who's quiet.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The whole list is not coming to mind, but
No, no,
just
no. It's
not,
okay. They can go to your website and sign up for your newsletter and get the whole
yeah,
list, right?
yeah, exactly. But you just, for yourself, just think about, okay, what you're feeling is true, right? Your child is feeling bossy to you, right? But what might be the good part about being strong-willed or, wanting to lead? Like, see, and if you think about it that way, they can often give you a different way to describe it. Think about the
Right.
good in that quality.
Like the vision. The person with the leadership has a vision,
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
and no, that's really great. And a lot of the things I do in my work are asking people to just say something differently. It's not like you said, they notice something and that thing is true, but the naming of it in a labeling kind of way is limiting.
Yeah.
And so if you can figure out how to use the words in an expansive way to open possibilities, but I'm thinking energetic, like my kid can't focus.
Mm.
Maybe they can focus, but maybe they focus really quickly. Maybe they're very energetic and they finished this thing, what they wanted to do. Maybe they didn't put all their toys, all their little kitchen toys away, but maybe they put the one thing they wanted to put away in the little toy refrigerator and they're done. Their idea wasn't to clean up the whole play area. It was just put this little thing in there.
Right.
And so to say that they're energetic is very different than to say they're scattered, they can't focus. And I think, unfortunately, I think the medical profession sometimes comes at you with those labels. By this age, your kid should be able to do one, two, three. And if they aren't doing those things in that order, I think it can create a lot of fear and unhappiness.
Yeah, those kinds of things from the medical community are a good guide, right? And so, certainly developmentally, like learning to crawl, learning to walk, learning to talk, those kinds of things, you do want to kind of have an idea of what's the range there for your child, because it could indicate some kind of delay that then, you would want to pay attention to as quickly as possible to get your child the support that they need. But related to what you're saying too is that, at any age, even if a child is, really mature or good about doing these things, there may be another part of their personality that is not as developed in that area. And that's totally normal. I mean, or even from day to day, maybe yesterday they were like really responsible, but today, not so much. That's also normal because they're still learning. And if you even think about ourselves, right, don't we have days where we sort of feel like we want to have a tantrum because we're just like stressed out and we yell or, we just vent or something that we wouldn't normally do? It happens. So it can be good to keep that in mind as well.
Yeah, I was thinking I had my cousins. There were 4 kids in their family, and the youngest one wasn't talking, and her mom was getting really nervous. My aunt, and they were getting ready to go on great vacation. And my grandma, it's my grandma again, because she was kind of funny, but she was cool. She was a school teacher too, right? So she said, "You guys go on vacation. You leave Shelly with me. She'll be talking when you get back."
Well,
And she was. What happened is all the other kids were talking for her, and the mom didn't see it. They're going, Shelly wants a glass of milk. Shelly wants to go outside. She wants to do this. She wants to do that. And the mom was busy with 4 kids, right? And so she didn't notice that before the baby could say what she wanted, everybody else was fixing it for her. When she was stuck at my grandma's, my grandma didn't know what she wanted, and nobody was there to translate for her. And she started talking right away because they know words. Like you said, they know us inside and out. Think how long before the baby starts to talk and walk that all they've been doing is watching the parents, observing the parents, learning the parents. learning what upsets the parents.
Yeah.
Oh, if I scream at this pitch, they run to me. How cool is that?
Yeah.
Because it's I went to Italy too when I was like probably about 34 or something. Couldn't speak no Italian, and I went into the countryside with friends. I had a friend who spoke English, but he was very fluent in Italian, and and nobody else spoke English. So I started getting a few words, and a friend of mine wrote to me and she said, "How does it feel to be in the pre-verbal world of a toddler?"
Wow.
And I was just like, "Oh, heck. No wonder kids have this difficult phase. They know what they want to say and they want to communicate. They have no words." My
And
friend Ruth came on and she said, "What a difference someone who listens well as opposed to someone who's just quiet." It's a transformative thing, and I think, like you said, sometimes you need somebody from the outside to give a buffer and some space to help them see their child from a different angle. Because especially my parents are making the money and keeping the house and, um, you know, getting everybody dressed and fed and, and today's world is not easy. I mean, that's the other thing I wish everybody, but especially parents, could give themselves some grace for. Is I think nobody realizes that before COVID, like maybe stress was down my hands or down by my lap, right? And COVID happened and it, boom, it went up here. And then, then we got kind of used to it, but it's never gone back down, the level of stress. And I hated this story too. The straw that broke the camel's back. They always talked about that story when I was a kid. But it's true. If your stress level is here, it takes much less to unbalance you than if your stress level is way down in your lap. And so kids they don't aren't watching the news. They aren't stressed about the world situation. They aren't stressed about the price of gas. But energetically, if their parents are stressed, they're stressed.
hmm
And so everybody's stress level's a little bit up. So something that would have been nothing a year ago causes a big upset.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. So then we're getting back to what we were talking about at the beginning, which is our triggers, right? When we're stressed, as you're saying, the littlest thing can be a much bigger trigger than it was in the past. And when we feel triggered as a parent, right, because our child is misbehaving when we're already stressed or whatever it is, that's when we're more likely to yell or do something afterwards that we wish we hadn't. And so, one of the biggest tips I can offer parents in that situation is one, again, be good to yourself, realize that this is normal and you're totally not alone, right? As Laura just talked about, pretty much all of us are in this situation. Um, and then, secondly, knowing that, start thinking for yourself about ways that you can calm yourself down, both like proactively and also in the moment. So I'll give a few examples, right? Well, you will know for yourself what relaxes you. Is it meditation? Is it journaling? Is it exercise? Is it being outside? Is it listening to music? And I'll just say that I always plug music and nature because those have scientifically been proven to reduce the level of cortisol, which is a stress hormone in your body. And it's free and it's all natural. So I love those solutions. Um, but whatever it is, if you can incorporate those things on a regular basis into your life, whatever you can do, I know we're all crazy busy. That's one thing to do proactively. And then in the moment, right, when you feel that rising and you feel that you're about to maybe yell at your child, two suggestions for you. One is if your child is safe, right? One thing to keep in mind is that most things don't need to be dealt with right at that moment. Most things can wait. And so you can say, I'm feeling really frustrated right now, so I'm going to leave for a few minutes and I'll come back and talk with you when I come back. and just remove yourself from the situation and then do one of those things that will calm you down. I'll add, find or listen to something that's going to make you laugh, call a friend, do a yoga pose, whatever, just to like, calm down. And when you're calm, then you can go back and adjust with your child, whatever it is that you need to do.
Sharon, that's so beautiful. Because so many times when the child is misbehaving, the parent wants to put the kid in timeout. And and often when the child is misbehaving, they want attention. So if you yell, they got the attention. It was negative attention, but they got the attention.
Mm-hmm.
But this calm statement, even if you say, what you're doing right now is really upset. I find it energetically upsetting to me, but I don't want to talk to you about it. And then removing yourself from the child, this leaves the child with their behavior, with absence. They weren't told to go away. You said, I don't like to be around you when you're acting like this. It's not that I don't like to be around you. I just don't like to be around you when you're acting like this.
Well, I'm just going to do a slight adjustment. I'm not actually suggesting that. I'm actually just saying owning your own feelings and just saying, I'm feeling frustrated right now. And I want to leave and calm down so that I can talk to you when I'm calm, which is a
Right.
slightly different message, because, again, you're not saying anything bad about your child in that moment, right? You're not guilting them. You're not saying that they're no good, awful kid or anything like that, right? You're just saying, I'm feeling frustrated. I want to calm down first, and then I'm going to come back and talk to you about this. So that's a really good model for kids about how to own their own emotions, right? And how to know that it's okay for them to leave and calm down in their own relationships, whether it's you or friends later or, partners when they get older, right? So that they can come back and have a calmer, more productive conversation afterwards. So there's a lot of dynamics going on that are helpful for you and your child when you take this
It
kind
is
of
really
approach.
great because a lot of times people think that they must stay in communication.
Yeah,
And a lot of times both people need space and quiet. It's got to be an adventure having kids,
it is.
and probably every day is different. I mean, like you had said that too. Like one day they might be really good at and seem like they're making progress and going forward, and the next day it's like they never did any of that stuff, and you're like, what? And to not give in, right? Because I think sometimes when parents are fatigued too, that it's just too much, and they're just gonna like, and that's not. You talked about boundaries in the very beginning, and the child filling whatever space the boundary the parent makes. But part of this also is teaching the kid to have their own boundaries. And so if you don't have any boundaries, the kid's not going to learn how to make boundaries. And if you get exhausted and just ignore the kid and let them scream and yell and tear up their room or whatever they're doing because you're fatigued, they're not going to learn, oh, I'm fatigued, maybe I should pause. And this and I think kids, well, I just talk to kids like they can always understand, no matter what age they are, because they're listening to words. Now, there's concepts they can't get, but what you said, even somebody two can understand.
You can talk to them in an age appropriate way, right? You're not going to make it super complicated, but yeah, they can understand and they can hear what you're saying and they can hear the tone of your voice, right? They can feel the love that you're sending to them or the anger that you're sending to them. They get it all, right? They process it. And I think, with setting boundaries and being tired, I mean, I think that's something that comes up a lot. Or like, oh, I know I should do this, but I'm just too tired, so I'm just going to let it go. And you always have that choice, right? You always do. I think, and certainly it's fine to do it sometimes. Again, we're all human. The issue is how often do you do that? Um, does tiredness ever become an excuse for you? And then, given that, right, you're trying to raise a child who's responsible and kind, right, and empathetic and can take care of themselves and resilient, excuse me, um, and if that's the path you're trying to go on, and part of that is giving them some boundaries and giving them some structure so that they can learn certain things, the more you put off teaching that because you're tired, the further you're getting away from your goal, right? So keeping your goal in mind of how do I want my child to be when they leave my house, right? What are all the things? And you'll still be parenting after they leave. It's not totally done because 18 is still pretty young. There's still things about life they have to learn, and you'll be able to support and advise them. But for them to go off to college or get their first job and live independently and all those things, what do I want them to know? How do I want them to be as a human being, right? And so all the things that I do now help get them to that point. So the more that I put off teaching them that because I'm tired, you'll have to speed up later or work harder to do other things later. So it's a trade-off to make, but just to be aware of that can be helpful.
It sounds great, Sharon. It sounds just really great. So I know, because we know each other, that if parents go on your website, they can connect with you, they can get on your newsletter. Can they, at the website, if they wanted to just chat and see if you have information about the situation they're in? And can they set up a call from your website?
Yes, they can. At the bottom of my About page, they can set up a free, no obligation consultation call. I also have a section on my Work With Me page where it has the different programs I have. It says, do you have any questions? And you can click on there and fill out a form with a question. We can go back and forth or even just set up like a 20-minute conversation to give you one tip that might be helpful to you. So lots of ways. I have blog articles there. So lots of ways to get help and information and reach me. And I love questions. So I just encourage, if you have one and you want to find out more, please don't hesitate to reach out.
But I just love learning, right? And when you're a parent, you really are in charge of your child's learning. And like you said, all of that learning, how to be a caring human, how to be a kind human, how to be thoughtful, but also how to be creative and inventive and a leading type of human. And I think that well, I know teaching is fatiguing, and and parenting can be fatiguing, but it's so rewarding.
It is. And I think what's rewarding is to feel that close relationship with your child, right? To know, oh, I just love this child, and just to see the good in them, and then to feel their love radiating back to you, right? Or the hugs that they give you, or when they say, oh, I really like it when you spend this time with me, whatever that, positive feedback is. I mean, that's what makes it, right? I'm like, this is what I want. This is why I wanted to have children, right? This is the kind of relationship and the closeness that I want. And the more that you can foster that connection, right? That's what makes it wonderful.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon. I really appreciate your time and that you share all these good ideas. And I love the reframing and just fun, fun, fun. And and we might have to come back and talk again
Oh,
because about age specific particular things. But
I
again,
would love that. I
it
would
would
love
be
that. It's
fun.
been a pleasure talking with you. It was fun.
It is fun, isn't it? And Ruth said, "Thank you so much uh, for good advice." And so, on that note, if you have questions, put them in the comments. Reach out, talk to Sharon. Um, we are around, and obviously we like people, and we like kids, and we like learning and growing. So, take good care.